Meanwhile, United States President Donald Trump has ordered Israel to immediately stop the bombing of Gaza after Hamas said it had accepted parts of his 20-point plan to end the nearly two-year war. Remember, in a Truth Social post, Trump wrote that he believes the Middle East is ready for a lasting peace, stressing that hostages need to be released safely. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has welcomed what he described as decisive progress in the peace efforts in Gaza, praising Trump's leadership. Many nations, including Qatar, UK, Saudi Arabia, have also lauded Trump for his peace efforts. However, as most of the world looks forward to the peace in the region, the big question then is, will Trump's Gaza peace plan succeed? Joining us now live on the broadcast is Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Ambassador Sibal, thank you for being with us on NewsX today. What do you make of now the response by Hamas finally to the peace plan proposed by Donald Trump and accepted by Israel? A conditional yes by them. What should be inferred?
Well, it's a good move. It's a positive move. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, but I think there are going to be a lot of difficulties on the way. Hamas, obviously under pressure locally, and seeing the destruction that is being caused, as well as the pressure that they are being subjected to by Islamic states and Arab states, has had no choice but to agree to this, because if they had rejected the peace plan, then the entire responsibility for continuing destruction in Gaza, which is terrible, would have been placed on their shoulders. So they had to make some move to show that they were not rejecting the peace offer. But there are so many pitfalls, so many loopholes, so many uncertainties, so many difficulties that both sides will face when it comes to implementation of various provisions of this agreement, because it'll be a question of how much the bona fides of the both sides are accepted, whether one side will, in this case Israel in particular, will always raise questions about whether the obligations on the Hamas side or on the Palestinian side are being properly implemented or satisfactorily implemented. And then, of course, there is this very, very large question about who will govern Gaza, whether the Israelis will completely withdraw from Gaza or they'll keep a security perimeter, as they say they would. There is a question of the total disarmament of Hamas, which means that they'll come out in the open, because how will this disarmament take place? It can't take place in the air. People have to deposit weapons, and people have to be identified with weapons. So will they then show themselves that they are the members of Hamas? How many are they? The numbers, will they want to expose that? And then once they give up weapons, give up hostages, then do they rely on Trump or Israel, on the Arab states who have never really supported Hamas and the Palestinians to the point they should? Can they rely on them to actually steer the peace process forward without any problem? I think there are a lot of uncertainties. But as a first step, this is good, because hopefully it will stop the destruction of Gaza. It will relieve pressure on the population. It will allow humanitarian aid to go in, as the situation, from all accounts, it seems to be pretty desperate. And then the central point on which a lot of people are concerned, who even sympathize with the Palestinians, that is the release of hostages. That will be a big step forward in terms of, making public opinion much more receptive to the Palestinian demands. That now that the central point on which many countries were feeling very concerned, apart from the Arab world, about the taking of hostages, that point has been removed from the equation, and therefore there will be pressure on Israel. However, if one was to look at it cynically,
Yes.
Trump could have stopped this a long time ago.
Yes.
In fact, Israel has been able to continue this because of total unrelenting support from the United States.
Yes, but now interestingly, Ambassador Sibal, the United States has urged Israel to stop the bombing looking at this response from Hamas for the time being, given the fact that now earnest talks can happen and final negotiations can take place, but that has not actually implemented to any change on ground. Strikes by Israel continue as we speak.
Well, there it is, because unless unless there is real pressure on Israel, and I can't see Trump and the U.S. Administration putting that kind of pressure on Israel. Israel has benefited hugely over the years from total support from the United States, to the point, frankly, of impunity. Of course, we've got very good relations with Israel, and we are totally against terrorism. We don't sympathize with Hamas. All that is there. But nevertheless, I think purely in terms of counterterrorism, the situation has gone beyond any reasonable reaction by Israel. But then, there are some other problems. They are saying that the Hamas people can leave, and then they can, and they can come back, and the Palestinians can leave and they can come back, and that there'll be reconstruction of Gaza, which means there'll be a lot of very lucrative real estate deals, which will go into the hands of those who are going to be on the board of the peace process, with Trump as the chairman and Tony Blair as his second in command. Then again, there is a question of Palestinian Authority. Which Palestinian Authority, which was disowned by Gazan people, because the Hamas has been in power for so many years, couple of decades there or more. So which part of the Palestinian Authority will have the credibility of actually then being accepted by the Gazans as the legitimate prospective government in Gaza? Now these technocrats that they are trying to figure out who will be these technocrats, what legitimacy they have. And finally, very, very important point, it is outside the UN process. Outside the UN process. So this stabilization force that they're talking about is not going to be a UN peacekeeping force. So who will be members of that force?
Right.
The entire process will be in the hands of United States and UK and some Palestinian figures, but completely outside any UN approval of the process. So that again is a huge flaw in the process. But I'll again say that in terms of immediate relief to the Palestinians, this is a good step.
Right. Now, you started out by saying that finally it is also light at the end of the tunnel. Do you believe then that this conflict will finally end in the next few days, or will it take longer?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, you see, the conflict is not simply that the bombing is going on or the destruction is going on. I mean, that is only the physical consequences of what is a much, much more deep-rooted conflict that dates back to the creation of Israel. There's a whole history behind this. But that is the conflict, and the whole issue of a separate Palestinian state. Now, this particular proposal doesn't say anything really about the creation of a independent Palestinian state, even though some major European countries have come forward and actually supported the idea of a Palestinian state, making it conditional on the release of hostages. Now, once the hostages are released, then the question comes eventually of creating a Palestinian state. But if you ask me, because I have served in that area, I visited Israel, I was ambassador to Egypt, there is no way that a Palestinian state can be created. In fact, the big danger is the incorporation of the West Bank de facto into Israel by extension of settlements and this and that. In any case, the whole area has been divided into little enclaves with walls and security perimeters and fences and everything else. There is no unified Palestinian state that can be created. And then what happens to Netanyahu, who's gone on record repeatedly to say even now that there is no question, he said it at the UN also, there is no question of a Palestinian state being created, because there will be a constant danger to the security of Israel. So when you talk of the conflict, you have to think in the long term, and what will be the long-term solution? And the long-term solution is, as is in the UN resolutions repeatedly passed, the creation of two independent and sovereign states living side by side in peace. I am afraid that is going to be a very, very difficult task to achieve.
Yes. Okay. Now, finally, we've also seen, interestingly, on this very peace plan, on this issue, Pakistan's backstabbing of the US begin as well. You know, they may try and cozy up to the United States, but their real colors show, and perhaps the US should see through this. Where on one hand, Donald Trump says countries like Pakistan are on board. That's what they've conveyed to him. And then domestically within Pakistan, you have Ishaq Dar rise up in their assembly and say, nahi, hum to isse sehmat nahi hai. We weren't consulted. We are not on board. This is not our final plan.
Yes, but you know, events have overtaken all this. The Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of Pakistan said that in Parliament and imputed something which others have also said, that the final plan announced by Trump was not quite that was discussed with the Arab and Islamic leaders. And there was obviously a backlash within Pakistan. And he therefore said what he did. But this has been overtaken because Hamas has conditionally accepted the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So Hamas having done that, in fact, Pakistan has been caught wrong-footed once again. First time wrong-footed because they tried to distance themselves from the plan, assuming that it was not the plan that was discussed with Trump, and Trump had exceeded his role and
yes.
authority. And then they are back, they're wrong-footed second time when Hamas says that in principle they accept the plan, and in fact thank President Trump for that. Though of course they have raised issues which will need discussions later on, and they are not going to be easy issues to resolve at all.
Okay.
But Pakistan has made a fool of itself twice.
Okay. Ambassador Sibal, appreciate you joining us with your perspective.